Hey everybody, welcome to Q&A number 13 today. Sorry it's been so long, it's been about a month. I haven't had a whole lot of questions, so I've kind of been holding off to get a few to be able to do this presentation. Also forgive me for using the earbuds today, but there's a little bit of wind today and it is kind of hitting the microphone, so hopefully this will keep some of that down a little bit. Let's get right into it. Bob Cat asks, hey, bear canisters are recommended for use by the ATC, so would you use the bear canister or continue with the hang method? I realize the canisters weigh considerably more than the bag. And do you see many through or section hikers with the canister? In 2 seasons of hiking in 16 and then 17, 1,400 miles, I've come across maybe 6 people using the bear canisters. They're kind of a pain, to be honest with you. I mean, they're a fixed size. They are heavy. Not all packs are equipped to handle a bear canister. So if you go with the smaller ones, then you may end up with extra food that you've got to do something with. And how you use them too is you have to go find yourself a place where a couple of logs have fallen. And then you put the bear canister in the crook of those logs, and if the bear tries to get it open, it's supposed to not be able to do that. But you also need to make sure that you're not on the side of a mountain because that bear is going to be working at that can for a while, and if you're not careful, that canister can end up rolling down the side of the hill, down part of a mountain, and totally get lost. So I would probably still staying with the hang method, to be honest with you. It's a lot easier. It's a lot less weight. Most of your problems on the AT anyway are rodents, mice, chipmunks, squirrels, things like that. Even in the Shenandoahs, where you have the most incidences of bears, raccoons were more of a problem than really the bears were. I think so far, in 2016, Watauga Lake was closed due to bear activity, and one of the shelters right before you get into Daleville, and then in 17 there was some bear activity, but the shelter wasn't closed. In New York, it was going to be the next shelter that I stayed at, but I ended up having to get off the trail. So, all right, my questions fell on the ground here. Let me pick them up. Okay, Ice Ager RB he's wondering, he's going to be starting his Noble flip-flop in Harper's Ferry, and he wants to know how many miles before he hits the rocks in Pennsylvania. It's about 3 to 3.5 miles prior to Duncannon as you really start to get into the rocks, and you'll descend down to Duncannon, and then once you climb up on that next ridge line, you hit the knife's edge, and then it doesn't stop after that. I thought maybe it stopped in New Jersey for a while because you've got the boardwalks that everybody shows in their videos, but it stayed pretty rocky through New Jersey until right at the end before you go into Vernon is when you hit all those boardwalks, and then you come out, you climb the Stairway to Heaven, and then when you get into New York, you're getting into all sorts of rocks again. So matter of fact, I kind of was wondering, where is the trail, an Appalachian Trail in that part of New York? Because it just seemed like it was just a bunch of white blazes on trees going through big boulder fields. So yeah, 3.5 miles prior to Duncannon, the fun starts, and probably never really ends, to be honest with you. You get to Katahdin. So, all right. Also, Ice Ager IB is wondering about a place to stay in Harper's Ferry. Yeah, you're right. In the guide, there's not a whole lot of options. There's a couple of bed and breakfasts. I stayed at the Econo Lodge. I think if I remember right, the hiker rate was $80 a night, and which is a lot for an Econo Lodge at a hiker rate, because you'll find them at most of the trail south of Harper's Ferry around the $45 a night. So there's not a whole lot of choice. Now, what I did like about the Econo Lodge, and when you look at the diagram in the AWOL guide, you kind of left with the impression that you'd hike from the Econo Lodge up to the ATC, then take the Blue Blaze Trail down to the AT, and then start hiking north. But you can actually come out of the Econo Lodge parking lot, turn right, go down to the main road there, and hike along the shoulder about less than 100 yards, climb over the guardrail, and the AT is right there. And you can go north, you can go south. So, but if anybody else has any other ideas about where to stay in Harpers Ferry, go ahead and chime in the comments section below. Ice Ager or B would probably appreciate that. Now this is not a question but a comment, and it helps to emphasize what's going on with a gear video that I did, and I've got a fighter here in the background. I'm going to go ahead and stop for a second. One of my challenges doing the video this morning was there was a whole bunch of F-35s that were out taking off, and it was deafening, and I just could not get the video done. Okay, so back to a comment about the gear video that I did on a review on the One, which is a single wall tent by Gossamer Gear. And Backpacker Fireman, the comments made are actually quite appropriate for any kind of a single wall tent. You know, so if you're out there using one of the Z-Packs duplexes, it's probably going to be a kind of a similar experience. So let me read you what he said about this. He said, I've used this tent 6 nights so far. 2 nights were in the high 50s to low 60s, and I had minimal condensation on the inside, which was easily mopped up with a small camp towel. 2 nights were in the same temps as above, but very windy, and I woke up with no condensation on the inside. 1 night it rained off and on for 4 hours, and when I woke up again there was minimal condensation on the inside. I always have one door closed and one door open. The 6th night it was 29 degrees, so I had both doors shut, and when I woke in the morning the inside was soaked and I had condensation dripping on my face. Good news is it dries really fast if you stop midday and lay it out while you take a break. And he says that he's 5'6", and he's got room for his Neo Air quilt, pillow, and a pack in there with about 5 inches of clearance on both sides. Okay, so that kind of helps out. And I think the experience with anybody with a single wall tent, if you've got temperatures that are cold and your body breathing out 98-degree warm moist air, it's gonna condense on the inside. So even if you're doing a dual wall tent like the Flight Creek that I've got, that condition is pretty similar to the first night back on the AT in April in the Shenandoahs up at Bird's Nest number 3, where we had a considerable amount of condensation on my rainfly that I ended up putting that over a little. I had some extra string with me that I threw up a little clothesline and put it out to dry, and before I packed it up, because it was pretty wet. So that's going to happen with about anybody, pretty much any tent if you've got it closed up. All right. Bri B asks, why did you decide to almost always stay in shelters? I'm going the hammock route, and I look forward to not having to deal with mice, snoring, norovirus, noisy Neo Airs, etc., etc. Certainly nice to not to have to set up and take down when I need my solitude. Let me divide that up into shelter and shelter areas. Usually when I stayed in a shelter, it was because of a weather situation. Okay, either I had just beat the rain and I didn't want to sleep in the rain and have to pack out a wet tent the next day, or I may have had to camp in the rain that night and now I didn't get a chance to dry it out that day for reasons like maybe continued rain, and you're wet, and then so you don't want to put up a wet tent because it's not getting dried, and your gear is going to get wet, and so you go ahead and use the shelter. And if you've been watching any of the 2018 hikers that are out there right now, yeah, you'll notice that a lot of them are in the shelters right now because it's just been foggy, high humidity, rain, everything's kind of staying wet. Okay. Now, as far as shelter areas go, probably 98% of the shelters have a water source with them. That's why there's a shelter there. And the shelters, at least, there's exception to this rule, but they seem to be built about 7.5 to 8 miles apart a lot of times, sometimes closer. But so when you're first starting out and you're doing low miles, it almost matches up that you're kind of at a shelter area at the end of your day. And when you start getting a little bit higher miles, you might skip a shelter, but then you'll end up at a shelter again. So the fact that there's a water source there, honestly, you get kind of tired of sitting on a rock and a log trying to cook your meals, and sometimes it's nice to use the picnic table, and it's a good way to kind of meet other people and converse with them. Us humans, we are kind of pack animals in a way, if you will. We do socialize. So even though I'm an introvert, could even call me a loner. And I hike alone during the day because I don't really hike with a partner. So sometimes it's kind of nice to be around other people, hear other voices at least once a day. That's probably why I ended up kind of, finding myself at the shelter areas more so than just stealth camping. Okay. First couple of times I stealth camped, it was kind of hard. It kind of felt kind of weird, but then you kind of get used to it. And yeah, if you're using a hammock, you're probably going to want to be a little bit further away from people, especially if you plan on trying to take a sponge bath and clean up, change out of your wet gear into your dry sleeping clothes. You need a little bit more privacy to be able to do that, especially if you're a female. So, you will. Now, as far as mice, mice do not discriminate between stealth camping and shelter areas. Some of the worst mice damage I've had done to my gear was done stealth camping, not in a shelter area. I've had when I was hammocking, I've had mice running along the ridge line, and you kind of knocking them off. You hear them slide down and hit the ground, because if you don't, they're up there chewing on your ridge line and on your netting. I've had mice chew on the bit valve for my hydration bladder when I was carrying one. I chewed it up all one night. And of course, when I was stealth camping in Pennsylvania, right before Delaware Water Gap, that night something got into my vestibule and tore up my shoelaces. Just chewed the heck out of them. So I had to cut them and tie them in knots and everything to be able to get down to Delaware Water Gap from my boots. So, mice don't discriminate between what you're sleeping in or where you're sleeping. Okay. Let's see, a norovirus. Yes, you got to watch the norovirus, especially around the shelter areas. You definitely want to sweep out the shelter when you get there. Kind of get rid of that mouse poop. If you've got, you're going to want to keep your pack zippers open when you're on even in your own stealth camping site. You might want to keep the zippers on your pack open, because if you've had a granola bar at some point in time in your hip belt pocket, you're guaranteed to have odors in there, and a mouse will chew through it to see what the odor is. So it's better just to leave the zipper open so they can climb in and out. And then you're going to have to, be conscious about knocking out that poop and stuff. Unfortunately, now let's see, norovirus. Probably your biggest threat of picking that up is from the shelter register. Okay. Other hikers touching the register, using the pen, and sometimes the registers don't get put away like they should, and they're just laying on the shelter floor. Well, then when you're not around, the mice are out there trying to chew on the edges of them, trying to get paper to use for nesting material, and that's your biggest threat for norovirus is those trail registers. So if you're really into writing your stuff in there and seeing who's come back before and after you, man, you got to use that hand sanitizer. And technically, hand sanitizer only kills bacteria. It's not going to kill viruses. Okay, so you really want to use soap and water. I got to the point where I didn't really pay much attention to the registers very often, nor did I write in them. If I did, I usually used my own pen, and would try and use a stick to open it up to the register, use my own pen to write something in, and then use a stick to close it. So I didn't really touch it, since I wasn't interested in getting the norovirus at all either. So snoring's definitely an issue in the shelters, and loud neo airs. Also hostels, snoring in hostels is just awful, which is why I tended to kind of favor a cheap hiker hotel versus a hostel if I had a chance. All right, key skags. While you were hiking, what do you do with your AWOL guide? Do you keep the current page out to reference while you're hiking, or do you keep it all put away? I buy my AWOL guide from David Miller's website, an anti-gravity gear. When you do that, you get a nice heavy-duty Ziploc bag that comes for the book, and I will take about half of the trail with me at a time, put it in there. But when you buy it on his website, you can also pick up a couple extra of those Ziploc bags for 25 cents. So I get a couple of those. And in 2016, I had I had one of the little Ziploc bags, and each day I put in that sheet or the next sheet, or maybe the sheet and then the map of the town I'm coming into. It was on the back of that, and I would have it in my pants pocket, and I was looking at it all the time. And it's a little frustrating because you don't know exactly where you're at. I mean, I'm good at map study, and having been a pilot and everything, I could give it a pretty good guess. But it was always so frustrating. Okay, now where exactly is this water source coming up? And when in 2017, when I got the gut hooks app, it's really kind of cool because you've got the little if you're using you might be using the little arrow triangular tracking if you're using the map method, or if you're using the elevation. It has a little pipper that shows where you're at, and you can touch the water source you're going to, and it'll tell you exactly how far away it is. Okay. Plus, it'll give you information about there, like there might be a comment from somebody 2 weeks ago that says, "Hey, this water source is dried up," and you haven't had any rain in the last 2 weeks, so that helps you plan ahead a little bit better than what the AWOL guide has for you. What I found is I would still put that sheet in, but I hardly would ever look at it during the day in 2017. It just stayed in my pocket. When I go back out here in 2018, I will probably, just in case, take that extra Ziploc bag with me, but I think I'll probably just exclusively use the Gut Hook app during the day, and then I'll use the paper to document my experiences that day, and to mark where I stayed that night, and then do my long-range planning and where my resupplies are going to be. So I still like the paper for that part. It really helps to be able to plan. Okay, Darren Garlow asks, if you buy only one down jacket for the entire thru hike, what would you buy? What amount of down, and would you have a hood on it? So I purchased a Marmot, but that thing would not compress. And my friend, the dude, was his trail name in 2012. Brett, he came by and looked at that and went, "Man, something's wrong here. You should be able to compress your down jacket into a kind of a big softball size." And this thing was just huge when it was compressed. And so I did some more research, and I ended up going with a Montbell. And what was nice about the Montbell is it's a lot less expensive than a lot of down jackets. And I went without a hood. I kind of that worked for me because I had a smart wool cap anyway, so it gives me a little more versatility. There are people that love their hoods. I think it depends if you get super cold or not. I tend to not have a lot of cold issues. Yes, you got to protect yourself from hypothermia, but there's some people that are just cold-blooded. I'm not. I'm hot-blooded. So for me, I think the hood is a personal choice. If you get one, I mean, there's not that much down in material there. It's not going to affect its compressibility that much in the size of the jacket. I think mine was about an 800 fill. I don't think it had the dry down in it, okay, which helps with water repellency, and that's probably why it was a little bit cheaper. I like the Montbell product. I like the way it compressed. I had a couple of snags that were my fault for not paying attention to doing stuff, or I've had to put some duct tape on it to keep the feathers from coming out. But hey, it's getting ready to go into its third season now, and oh, by the way, I would not send your puffy jacket home ever. Just keep it the whole time on the AT. It doesn't weigh that much, and it's very useful. Okay, there might be July where you may never use it, but there's going to be some times when you might get chilled after a rain, and you might only use it for an hour just to kind of get your body core temperature up again. But at least you've got it. I would keep it with you. That's one of those things I would not send home. All right, Keith Skaggs asks, in reference to my stem cell recovery, I talked about a zero drop, and the fact that my podiatrist discouraged me wearing a zero drop shoe, i.e. the Altera, the Lone Peaks that I was planning on wearing. And he said that there's more Achilles tendon damage done in zero drop shoes than anything he sees. So keep that in mind, those of you out there that are going to use them on the trail. You definitely want to make sure that you've done a lot of Achilles stretching. Remember, tendons take like 600 miles to adjust to the hike, so you're going to be vulnerable for a good period of time. But zero drop, what it is you know, if you get your heel and your toe, and if they are in the same plane when they strike the ground, okay, and that shoe, that's kind of a zero drop. Think of a sandal. All right, well, a lot of shoes, I think the Obos have about an 8 millimeter drop. So that means the heel is up about 8 millimeters higher. The Wildcats that I have are 13. There's others that are about 10. So basically, it's a heel. Okay, there is a built-in rise in the heel, so your heel is up a little bit higher than where your toes and the pad strike at. So it's just a kind of a built-in heel into the shoe. So that's your drop, and the zero drop means that they've taken that away. So you're basically wearing a shoe that would be like a moccasin. Okay, and the Lone Peaks, when I wear them, that's exactly how they feel. It's like I'm putting on a pair of moccasins to go walk in. And that might not be a bad thing. However, coming off of an injury, he's saying, you know, don't do it. So I'm either going to be back to my Wildcats to start out. I'm also currently looking at a set of Obos. I think it's the Sawtooth is what I'm looking at right now. One of my issues is, you know, when I got married, I was at about 11 to 11 and a half on a shoe size. As I've gotten older and heavier and gravity's pushed down on me, that eventually went out to about a 12 and a half, depending upon the shoe. So I started out with a 13 size Loa on the AT in 2016. Started off the same size in 2017 on the Loa, and it was a little had little problems with banging my toes in the 13. I tried some Solomons in Delaware Water Gap that were 13s, and they were way too small. So I went to a 13 and a half with my the Wildcats, and kind of wore those here since I came home, and wore those out and got a new pair, and lo and behold, they're a little bit too small. So now I'm looking at a size 14. Well, guess what? That's a game changer. When you go to a 14, there's not a lot of, you've got some limited choices out there. For example, the Wildcats don't have a size 14. Obos do, but that's the last size they offer. So there is some issues, and it's kind of funny. On Dixie, Homemade Wonderlist, I made the same observation recently when she was talking about her footwear, that she started off with the same size shoe to do the PCT that she ended the AT in, but her feet had continued to flatten and spread during that period of time, and she ended up with all sorts of blister problems and had to go to a larger shoe. So it's not uncommon once you start doing this long distance backpacking, your feet do grow and they do spread out a lot. So that's just life. All right, everybody. I have set up an email address that is bigbirdhikes@gmail.com. So if you've got questions that you don't necessarily want everybody else to see, you know, and maybe you don't want your answer on a video, but you like to get an answer to something, you know, go ahead and send me an email. I'll answer you back. And if you don't want me to put it on the video, just let me know that this is just a kind of a personal conversation, and we'll do that. That way, because I offer an older perspective on this hiking experience. There might be some things that you want to personally ask that you don't feel comfortable asking in an open forum. So anyway, bigbirdhikes@gmail.com, and I've got a little graphic here, a 10-second graphic at the end, where that'll be on there, and you can write that down, and we'll go from there. All right, everybody, have a great day today. We'll see you later. Bye.